Hi everyone, here is my presentation on using journals in action research. Journals in action research are called or referred to as data journals. They can be kept by both teachers and students, and teachers may also use them as class journals. For the student journals, teachers can use these to get a sense of students' experiences, thoughts, and perceptions. And I provided a quote from the Mills chapter. As a record kept by a student, it can inform the teacher researcher about changing thoughts and new ideas and the progression of learning. For the teacher journals, teachers can use these to keep a narrative record of their own reflections on their practice, and teachers also use them to keep track of progress through the process. So I thought that journals, as using the teacher journals, would be a great resource for anybody conducting action research, because it definitely helps to keep a record of what you're doing and your thoughts and feelings throughout the entire process. So I may end up doing a teacher journal through my action research just to keep track of all of these things. To use data journals as class journals, it's a less formal version of a student journal. It's a blank notebook that's used and passed around through the class, and it said in the articles that you can have them sitting out all the time, or you could pass them out at certain points. It's really up to you in that sense. In the class journals, students write or draw pictures of their thoughts, ideas, perceptions, and feedback. And Mettler and Johnson recommended providing some sort of guidelines for the entries to avoid quasi-teacher-approved graffiti. And they mentioned in the article, too, that this graffiti might hurt other students' feelings. So you just have to be careful with that and make sure you set guidelines for the entries. For the process and procedures, the journal acts as a narrative technique and records events, thoughts, and feelings that have importance for the writer. That was another quote from the Mills chapter. And they can be used by teachers, students, and a class. The journals are definitely the qualitative part of the research. The questions that it would answer: what's going on here, what are students' feelings, ideas, or perceptions about a topic, and how are students progressing through a topic. The reason that journals are qualitative instead of quantitative is because it really addresses the idea of feelings, ideas, and perceptions about the topic rather than using numbers and collecting data that way. The journals are definitely a collection of feelings and ideas rather than the numbers. Some strengths and weaknesses of using journals. The strengths would be that they keep track of observations, they keep track of feelings during the action research project, and they really capture the thinking of students and the teacher during the entire process. Some weaknesses that I thought of is that they could be interpreted incorrectly. Just kind of thinking back to if you're talking with someone through email or texting, sometimes things can be interpreted incorrectly. So that's definitely something that came to mind when I was thinking, okay, these students are going to be writing in their journals and then the teacher is going to be reading them. And without some context clues, without looking at the student as they're expressing these ideas and feelings, they might be interpreted wrongly or incorrectly, especially if students are too young to write out words and maybe they're drawing pictures instead. That might be interpreted incorrectly. So maybe a way to fix this would be to have students write in the journals and then come and talk to the teacher about their entry that they made, so that the teacher could kind of use context clues and pick up on those things as the student is explaining what they made in their journal entry. And another weakness was that when used as a class journal, students may not be honest due to others seeing what they wrote. They may be a little uncomfortable too. Something that brought this back would be like a group interview. Group interviews don't always go too well just because there's other students watching. The students in the interview, and they might not be honest, or they might just kind of go with what the person before them said rather than recording what they actually thought or what they were actually feeling during the process. So those were just some weaknesses that I thought of that could be hurtful in using a class journal or just using a journal in general for students. Some concerns that I had for the validity, I didn't really have a concern with this just because I know validity and reliability are more of the quantitative aspect side rather than the qualitative. But I wrote for validity, the only concern is that journals are used appropriately for the research questions, which I'm pretty sure with all research questions you could use a journal in, especially if you're thinking of using the teacher journal like I had mentioned that I may use for my project. For the reliability, as long as the journals are used appropriately, they will measure what they are supposed to each time. And then for ethical concerns, the only thing I thought of was using a class journal where all students can see what each other writes down. As I mentioned on the last slide, that concerns me a little bit. But maybe instead of using the class journal, maybe use the independent student journals or the teacher journal to avoid this concern. That is everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to looking at everybody else's videos.